Come see this thing 1547. Patriarchal inheritance, disinheriting, losing stats, abusing statistics. This is a series where I summarize rantatonne posts made up of at least 3 things I've read, seen, or heard. Question 1. Who should legally be the keeper of what was the father's? One of the cool things about living in or just viewing what goes on in developing nations is seeing how certain things are established. Some of the things that are already just accepted law or accepted ways of doing things in the developed world are still coming to kind of be selected. What are you going to learn from? What are you going to take from the developed world and actually apply to your culture? And then what is it that is in your culture that has long been left in the past of the developed world that will continue? So in this section, we're featuring a Citizen TV story about this Supreme Court of Kenya ruling that children born out of wedlock to Muslim fathers are entitled to inherit from their father's estate. Kenya is on the Horn of Africa, which is on the east coast, which is closer to the Middle East. So there's a lot more relations. This goes back to like the Saharan slave trade and other things like that, and just transport between the places. So there's a significant Muslim population here in Kenya. And as they do in the Middle East, they personally in their communities like having Islamic law, Islamic specific laws, and the country itself has kind of made dispensations for that. So there's more on that there and what this is going to say with a culture that's been polygamous as is, with all these kids coming from different kind of locations and whatnot. But in this story, an advocate points out there's a lot of people coming to the table, a lot of people showing up when somebody's wealthy and there's a chance to inherit something. But how many people show up when it's inheriting debts and things like that? And that leads us to the next question. How much stronger will Project Ukraine make Russia? The Trump administration, I think, had a chance to let go of Project Ukraine, just to walk away. So he's still kind of dabbling in that. He's definitely not as bought in as Biden administration was. But there's this tendency of political administrations, politicati all over the world, to say everything good that happened when they're in power is due to what they did. It's their personal thing. They didn't inherit a good system from the other person. In fact, everything bad is due to what they inherited from the previous administration, the previous regime. Places like Russia, with Putin just being in power for that long time, he doesn't worry about inheriting because it's all him. All the good and the bad is him. And right now, when it comes to Project Ukraine, it's looking good for Putin. They're winning. The Western politicati, those people who are the puppet masters puppeteering Ukraine, are losing. And I think they're finally starting to admit that we need to find a way to get out of this. But then they don't want to inherit the blowback that will come back from holding the bag and having to pick up the pieces when Project Ukraine finally crumbles. This project began, I think, with the Maidan coup, with the Orange Revolution that the West kind of backed in that. But it's kind of pitiful seeing what the European leaders have been reduced to, because they come from countries, they come from places where they used to be the center of the world. They used to be the peak. On the political stage, it'd be maybe just one of the countries at a time. Then it got to a time, okay, there would be co-stars. They'd be on stage and maybe one of them would be an antagonist. And then when America came in, the new kid on the block, America at least understood that, yes, we became this America. Yes, we're starting this new stage, but we're still using the same language, the same techniques, the same storylines from Europe because we came from Europe. We are of Europe. We're kind of like the protege of Europe. They would still get to feature in the stories that America was putting on, but in the multipolar world, Europe is not going to be on the marquee anymore. Last question. How aware are parents of their inheritance? We have the tendency of mythologizing our past. Then you have civilizations, these older ones like in Europe and Asia. They had the time where things were changing from myth to what we know as history today. So actual historical figures have mythical levels of goodness. But the inverse also exists where evil acts, evil things that happened in the past are also mythologized to such high levels of nastiness that they compare bad things they're doing in the present to those in the past and say, oh, at least it's not as bad as that, so it must be good. And that is evidenced in this first real-time study of parents spanking kids that's highlighted in this section.